They went in expecting insurgents, but what they found inside those caves defied every rule of nature. During the long and brutal years of war in Afghanistan, whispers spread through the ranks of something lurking deep underground, something that didn't move like a man, and didn't die like one either. Soldiers spoke in low voices about missing patrols, mutilated bodies, and missions quietly erased from official records. The Pentagon called them myths, but veterans called them memories. One story in particular still haunts the military community, a classified encounter in the mountains of Kandahar. A team of elite U.S. soldiers vanished after entering a cave system. When a rescue squad finally went in, what they claimed to have seen was not human. And yet, their report was buried before it ever reached the public dot. So, what really happened in those dark Afghan caves? Were American soldiers fighting something far more ancient than the Taliban? Or was it a cover-up, a shadow war against a legend that was never meant to be found? Tonight, we uncover the mystery that refuses to stay buried. The truth begins deep underground. The vanishing patrol. The sun was sinking behind the jagged ridges of Kandahar when radio contact with Echo Team was lost. At first, it seemed like another case of interference, the kind that happened every few days in that harsh terrain. But as minutes turned into hours, and the expected "we're fine" never came, unease spread through the base like a quiet fever. The soldiers had gone into the hills to investigate. Strange lights reported by a local shepherd. A simple recon mission. 6 men, all experienced, all steady under pressure. They entered a cave system carved into the mountainside, and then silence. No movement on satellite, no heat signatures, no response. It was as if the mountain had swallowed them whole. By dawn, a rescue team was assembled. The men moved out under the dull copper light of morning, boots crunching over gravel and bones of ancient rock. The closer they got, the quieter everything became. No birds, no wind, not even the distant hum of village life. Just the weight of something unseen pressing in from the cliffs above. When they reached the entrance, one soldier described it as a mouth that didn't want to open. The air inside was unnaturally cold, carrying a damp metallic scent like old blood. The first beam of a flashlight cut through the blackness, illuminating strange marks scratched deep into the stone, long deliberate grooves that didn't look made by tools or time. They looked like claw marks. A few meters in, they found the first clue, a shattered rifle, bent almost in half. Then a boot, torn open as if something had gripped it from the inside. One of the men muttered a prayer. Another said, quietly, no man could do that. Further inside, the tunnel widened into a cavern. The team's lights caught something on the ground, drag marks, deep and erratic, leading into a darker passage. The radio crackled once, then died. Static swallowed their voices. They decided to move forward in pairs, each step echoing like a heartbeat. The deeper they went, the more unnatural it felt. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe, and the walls began to shimmer with a wet sheen. Then, out of nowhere, came the smell, rotting meat, ancient and fresh all at once. One soldier gagged, covering his nose with a sleeve. The sergeant whispered, "Stay sharp. We find them, we get out." And then came the sound. A low, dragging scrape. Not footsteps. Something heavier. Something breathing. The flashlight beams shook as the men turned, searching for movement. The sound came again, closer now, followed by a deep, guttural growl that didn't belong to anything they'd ever heard before. One man shouted, fired his weapon. The cavern erupted in deafening echoes, gunfire flashing off wet stone. Then a scream, sharp, sudden, human. The lights went wild. The last image captured on a body cam showed a massive shape lunging from the darkness, eyes reflecting crimson in the glare. Before the feed cut to static. Hours later, only 2 men stumbled out of the cave. One was bleeding from the shoulder, his eyes vacant, whispering the same words over and over. It wasn't human. It wasn't human. The other refused to speak at all. He just sat on the ground, trembling, as medics tried to question him. When the bodies of Echo Team were finally recovered, something didn't make sense. Massive wounds, bones crushed with unnatural force, but no signs of explosives or gunfire on the enemy's side. Whatever they'd fought, it hadn't used weapons. It hadn't needed to. That night, the commander filed a preliminary report, unknown hostile engagement. But before dawn, higher command arrived. The documents were seized, hard drives removed, and the witnesses taken to separate locations for debriefing. The story changed. Officially, Echo Team had been ambushed by insurgents and killed in combat. But those who had seen the bodies knew better. The wounds weren't consistent with any human fight. Something far stronger had torn them apart. Weeks later, whispers began to spread among other units. Talk of a red giant that lived in the caves. A creature tall as 2 men, eyes glowing like fire in the dark. Soldiers joked at first. They always did, but the laughter never lasted long. Patrols started avoiding certain routes. Locals warned them not to enter the Forbidden Hollows. One interpreter swore the villagers called it the Man-Eater of Kandahar, a story older than any war. When command caught wind of the rumors, they ordered everyone to stop talking. One lieutenant who questioned the report was suddenly transferred. Another was told his clearance was revoked. It was as if the incident had been wiped clean from history, but the survivors couldn't forget. One of them, years later, after leaving the service, broke his silence in a podcast interview. His voice trembled as he described what he'd seen. A massive humanoid shape, reddish skin, teeth like broken stone. It moved faster than anything that size should move, he said. When we fired, it just kept coming. He claimed it took several soldiers just to bring it down. And even then, when they approached, it wasn't dead. It was still breathing. Soon after that interview aired, it vanished, deleted from every platform. The channel hosting it was suspended without explanation. The man himself stopped responding to calls. Still, pieces of the story kept resurfacing in online forums, in veteran gatherings, in hushed late-night conversations. Each retelling added new details, yet the core remained the same. Something ancient was encountered that day, deep inside those Afghan mountains. And someone made sure the world would never know. But buried secrets have a way of clawing their way back to the surface. And in the following years, strange footage began to appear, thermal scans showing humanoid figures in remote cave systems. Military contractors reporting unmarked recovery teams. Villagers claiming to hear thunder underground on nights when there was no storm. One detail kept returning in every account: the smell. That same metallic, decaying stench that haunted every soldier who survived the caves. Some called it legend. Others called it proof. But one question still remained. If those caves really were sealed after the encounter, what exactly were they trying to keep in? The creature in the darkness, it began with the eyes. That's what the last surviving soldier from the Kandahar rescue team whispered during his debrief. Eyes that glowed red like burning coals, hovering in the dark before the thing stepped into the light. He said it was at least 12 feet tall, its skin the color of dried blood, its face too human to be an animal, yet too monstrous to be a man. And when it roared, the sound didn't echo off the walls. It filled them. But none of that made it into the report. Officially, the cause of death for Echo Team was classified hostile engagement. No further details. No photographs. No autopsies released. Everything tied to the mission was buried under layers of secrecy that even the men who fought their couldn't access later. Still, one soldier Staff Sergeant David Lang kept a small notebook. It wasn't standard issue, just something he carried for sanity in a place where the world no longer made sense. In shaky handwriting, he recorded what he saw that day inside the cave. The shape, the stench, the crushing sound of bones breaking that didn't belong to any known weapon. But what made his notes truly disturbing was what came after. Lang wrote that after the creature fell, after every bullet they had tore into it, the air inside the cave changed. He said the temperature dropped instantly, like the mountain itself was mourning. And in the silence that followed, there came a low vibration beneath their boots. Not an earthquake. A pulse, rhythmic, deep, as if something else had woken up. That detail was never mentioned again. Not in any statement, not in the follow-up investigation. Because there wasn't one. Command ordered the entire area sealed within 24 hours. Drones were flown over the site. Satellite images later showed new structures, temporary, rectangular, built fast, then removed a month later, leaving nothing but disturbed rock. Years later, a local shepherd named Rahim claimed he'd seen American soldiers carrying something huge out of those mountains under black tarps. He said it took 8 men to lift it, and even then, the shape kept shifting as if it wasn't entirely rigid. When asked what it looked like, he said, "Not animal, not human, something in between." No one believed him. Not until he vanished 2 weeks after giving that interview to a regional journalist. His goats were found wandering the hills alone. His house, abandoned. Lang disappeared too. In 2011, his neighbors in Nevada reported his home empty, his truck still in the driveway, keys inside. Only one thing was missing, his notebook. For years, that story remained nothing more than an internet rumor. But in 2018, fragments of his notebook surfaced on a veterans forum. A few pages scanned, blurry, marked with stains that looked like rust or dried blood. One line stood out, scrawled across the last page in frantic ink. It wasn't alone. After that post, the account that uploaded the images was deleted. No trace, no IP, no recovery. But that sentence, "it wasn't alone," spread like wildfire. Researchers, conspiracy theorists, even a few military historians began tracing the legend, comparing it with old Afghan folklore. What they found was unsettling. Centuries-old texts from the region spoke of the Diu Fisangdin, the stone demon, a creature that lived in the mountains, guarding something ancient buried deep within the earth. It was said that entire tribes vanished trying to hunt it, and that any who found its cave were marked by death. The description matched perfectly. Giant, red-skinned, human-like, dwelling among bones and shadows. Could this ancient legend explain what the soldiers saw? Or was the legend born because someone, long ago, had already encountered the same thing? Some historians dismissed the connection as myth-making, but others pointed out how precise those old descriptions were, and how they matched the modern eyewitness accounts. The caves mentioned in folklore even lay near the same mountain range where Echo Team disappeared. Coincidence, maybe. Or something more. The story gained traction again when a retired pilot came forward, claiming he had been ordered to transport a large, sealed container from Kandahar airfield around that same period. He said it was kept under extreme temperature control, guarded by men without name tags, flown to a destination he wasn't told. All he remembered was the smell, metallic and rotten, like the inside of something dead. But that wasn't the most chilling detail. He said that during takeoff, the cargo began to move. Not shift from turbulence. Move, like something inside was pushing back. He asked his superior about it later. The man told him without emotion, "You didn't see that. You didn't hear that. You'll never speak of that again." He didn't, for nearly 15 years. There's something strange about fear. It spreads even in silence. Every soldier who served near that region during those months seemed to share the same nightmares. Caves, red eyes, something massive breathing in the dark. A few claimed to hear strange sounds echoing through the hills at night, rhythmic, almost like heartbeats under the earth. Some dismissed it as trauma, the echo of war still ringing in the mind. But for those who had been near the cave, it felt like something else. A presence that hadn't died, only gone deeper. By the time journalists tried to investigate, the area was closed to civilians. The caves were collapsed with explosives. Maps were redrawn, and local guides warned outsiders to stay away. But one thing still lingered: stories of animals vanishing near the site, of new sinkholes opening overnight, of tremors that seemed to follow no seismic logic. The U.S. military never commented again. The incident remained officially non-existent. Yet whispers persisted that something recovered from the cave was flown not to a base, but to a research facility. That its remains, if that's what they were, showed genetic anomalies no one could explain. And if that's true, if the creature wasn't alone, as Lang wrote, then what did the mountain still hold beneath its surface? Because even now, locals say that on certain nights, when the wind is low and the moon hides behind the peaks, you can hear it, the same sound the soldiers heard before the cave went dark. A slow, deep pulse from somewhere underground. And sometimes the earth. Answers. The cover-up begins. The official story lasted less than a week before it began to crumble. Reporters stationed near Bagram airfield caught whispers of an unusual recovery operation in Kandahar. The footage that leaked showed military trucks moving under blackout conditions, headlights taped, guarded by soldiers without insignia. For a moment, it seemed the truth might slip through. Then the footage vanished. So did the reporter who filmed it. Inside the bases, things changed. Patrols were reassigned. Whole units were ordered to sign new non-disclosure agreements. Soldiers joked nervously that they were fighting ghosts now, but no one laughed for long. A rumor spread that those who had seen the creature up close were being transferred stateside, except they never arrived. Their families received calls saying they'd been reassigned to undisclosed locations. One man, Captain Miller, had been part of the 2nd Recovery Unit. He'd entered the cave 2 days after the firefight, after the area was sealed. Years later, during a veterans therapy session, he spoke for the first time. His words trembled, his eyes distant. "We were told it was a recovery mission," he said. "Retrieve the bodies, collect the data, bring everything back." But there were no bodies left, only fragments. And something else. He described a crate in the center of the cave, not made by soldiers. It looked ancient, carved stone, smooth, engraved with strange spiral markings that pulsed faintly under their flashlights. The team thought it was an old shrine until they realized it was hollow, and whatever had been inside was gone. The next day, Command classified the mission as archaeological recovery. Yet the files were stored under a weapons division, not anthropology. That mismatch alone raised suspicions. Miller said when they transported the crate to base, 2 men in gray uniforms arrived by helicopter to oversee the process. No names, no ranks, just authorization codes no one had ever seen before. He overheard one of them say, "The specimen must not be exposed again." The reaction is unpredictable. The soldiers who heard that line didn't sleep that night. And by morning, they were reassigned. Miller tried to talk about it when he returned home. The nightmares wouldn't stop. The sound of breathing in the dark, the memory of those symbols glowing faintly on the stone. He contacted an investigative journalist in 2013, a woman known for exposing military cover-ups. They met twice. On the 3rd meeting, she didn't show. Her car was found near a river, door open, laptop gone. Her final text to him read only one line: "They're watching us." That was the last time Miller spoke about the incident publicly. Meanwhile, strange activity began surfacing across several U.S. bases. Cargo flights listed as biological sample transport. An uptick in blackout communications between intelligence divisions. Leaked manifests hinted at something stored under the code Entity Red. Most dismissed it as internet myth, but a handful of insiders began to connect it to Kandahar. And then came the night of the blackout. A small outpost near the same mountain range reported total communication loss for 6 hours. When the signal returned, half the camp was abandoned. Equipment scattered, tents torn open from the inside. No signs of battle, no blood, just emptiness. The few soldiers left behind were found wandering miles away, disoriented, eyes dilated, unable to recall how they got there. One of them was heard whispering. It woke up again. The Pentagon denied everything. But satellite imagery revealed something unusual. Heat signatures from within the sealed cave region, faint but rhythmic, like a heartbeat under the rock. Whatever they had buried wasn't entirely gone. Some believed the creature had survived. Others suggested something else entirely, that the cave wasn't its home, but a prison, that the Americans hadn't found a monster. They'd disturbed its cage. If that were true, then the old legends took on a darker meaning. The Devi Sangan wasn't worshipped by ancient tribes. It was feared because their ancestors had trapped it there. The spiraled carvings weren't decoration. They were locks, seals, and when the firefight shattered the cave walls, those seals broke. In the months that followed, a classified scientific unit began operating out of an unmarked site in Nevada. Locals near the desert claimed to see convoys arriving at night, carrying tarped containers that reeked of sulfur. Workers were warned not to ask questions. Some said the shipments hummed, as though machinery inside was still running. But others swore they heard something else, faint, steady breathing. Those who tried to investigate found themselves followed. Emails deleted. Phones tapping with static. When one researcher leaked documents mentioning red biological anomaly, his career ended overnight. The documents disappeared within hours. Yet, pieces of truth kept slipping through the cracks. A lab technician who'd been stationed at the Nevada facility years later claimed to have witnessed an organic mass that appeared to regenerate under observation. When exposed to light, it reacted violently, its tissue hardening like stone. When left in darkness, it began to move. He was asked what the samples were taken from. He said, "They told us it was from Afghanistan. But whatever it wasn't dead." That was enough to reignite the whispers online that the U.S. military had captured part of the creature, that they were studying it, and that its recovery had led to several containment breaches. But the more people tried to prove it, the faster the evidence vanished. Still, one detail kept returning. Every witness who'd been near that specimen described the same thing, the smell. Metallic, burning, ancient. The same stench that lingered in the caves. The same that soldiers swore never left their clothes. And then came something new. In 2022. A strange tremor was recorded near the original Kandahar coordinates. Small, but irregular, unlike any seismic pattern in the region. Days later, Afghan villagers living miles away reported red light flickering deep within the mountains. No one dared investigate. The American base nearest to that area denied any operations. But local guides said they saw helicopters circling the old cave road again, just like years before. Whatever they sealed might not have stayed sealed, and somewhere in a forgotten notebook, long lost to the desert, those last words of Sergeant Lang still echo like a warning carved into stone. It wasn't alone. Ancient legends, modern war, the wind that moved through Kandahar's high ridges carried stories older than any map. Long before armies marched across those deserts, before drones circled above the horizon, The mountains had their own keepers, creatures of rock and bone, the old men said, who punished those who dug too deep. For centuries, travelers spoke of entire caravans that disappeared in the passes, leaving behind only torn tents and red sand. Those tales had always been dismissed as superstition, until the war brought men with guns and lights into the same forbidden caves. Years after the incident, a cultural historian named Dr. Miriam Fadal traveled to the region under a research visa. She wasn't hunting monsters. She was studying Afghan oral traditions, stories passed down through generations. But the closer she got to the villages near the sealed mountains, the more hesitant the locals became. When she mentioned the Red Cave, conversation stopped. Men avoided eye contact. Old women crossed themselves with trembling hands. One finally whispered, "It woke once." The earth cried, "Don't make it wake again." Dr. Fadl recorded those words. But she didn't understand their weight, not yet. Her translator, a young man named Tariq, warned her that even saying the creature's name could draw its attention. But what drew hers was something different, a collection of ancient inscriptions carved into nearby cliffs. They matched the same spiral markings found on the crate recovered by American soldiers years earlier. Symbols not of art, but of sealing. Prison markers. The tribes, she discovered, believed these spirals represented the veins of the mountain. When broken, they released whatever slept beneath. She sent her findings to a linguist friend in London. Days later, he replied with a chilling note. The symbols aren't native. They're older, Mesopotamian in pattern. They mean containment. Containment in a region where empires had risen and fallen for millennia. Where Alexander the Great's armies once marched, and some of his men, according to rare records, vanished among crimson giants. That line had been dismissed as myth, until now, as Dr. Fadl pieced the puzzle together, she began noticing something strange. American drones still patrolled the sealed mountain zone, years after all military presence was supposedly withdrawn. One night, while camping near the edge of the old exclusion perimeter, she woke to see faint red light pulsing against the clouds. Not lightning, not fire. A steady, living glow. Coming from within the mountain the next morning, the villagers were gone. Every house abandoned overnight. Food still on tables. Doors left swinging open in the wind. Only silence remained, and the same metallic stench the soldiers had described years earlier. She fled, carrying her notes and recordings. But by the time she reached Kabul, her research files had been corrupted. The images she'd taken, the carvings, the red glow, the empty village were erased. Only one fragment survived, a blurred video of the ground trembling, dust rising, and a low rumble that seemed to come from under the camera. She never published her findings. Months later, she died in what officials called an automobile accident. Yet the footage leaked, spreading quietly online. People dismissed it as doctored until an American linguist who examined the carvings confirmed the patterns were authentic and indeed ancient. That revelation reignited the buried legend. Theories emerged that the creature wasn't a living being as much as a guardian, or worse, a remnant. Something made to protect whatever lay deeper within those caves. Some speculated it was an ancient weapon, built or bound by a lost civilization. Others argued it was organic, a relic of a prehistoric species humans never catalogued. But among all the theories, one stood out, the idea that it wasn't from this earth at all. An anonymous whistleblower, claiming to have worked at the Nevada research site, shared a statement that chilled even skeptics. The DNA sample was incompatible with any terrestrial record. The carbon reading was impossible. The cells showed mineral composition mixed with organic fiber, something between flesh and stone. When exposed to electromagnetic frequencies, the tissue vibrated as if responding to a signal. If true, it meant whatever was found in that cave was not a creature born of Earth, but something that had fallen to it. Something that had been sealed away not by chance, but by people who'd known what it was. That theory explained why governments, ancient and modern, would hide the truth. But it didn't explain what happened next. A new wave of seismic readings was detected in 2023, again near Kandahar. This time, scientists claimed it resembled resonant pulses rather than tectonic movement. One journalist compared the pattern to a heartbeat. The recordings, when amplified, even sounded alive. As global attention returned to the legend, a classified photograph surfaced briefly on a defense forum, quickly deleted, but not before being saved. It showed a cratered cave entrance, reopened by what looked like force from within. Around the mouth of the cave were burned vehicles, unmarked, charred down to their frames. The government called it a hoax. But satellite images from that same week revealed fresh military presence around the site. Temporary fencing, new roads carved into the dust. Whatever had been reburied was being watched again. In the middle of this chaos, another report leaked, this time from a United Nations survey team. They had been studying soil anomalies in the region when their instruments detected faint traces of radiation, ancient isotopes buried deep beneath the surface. When asked for comment, the UN denied the readings existed, but one scientist later admitted off record, "There's something under that mountain that doesn't belong to our timeline." As night fell over Kandahar again, the old stories returned. Locals whispered of rumblings in the distance, of livestock disappearing near the cliffs, of shadows that didn't match the shape of any human. One boy claimed to have seen red light flicker beneath the ground, like veins glowing through the rock. It could have been imagination. Or maybe, as the elders said, the mountain was breathing again, across the world, deep within a classified facility. A small red alarm blinked on a monitor labeled Entity Red. Location shift detected. Somewhere in the Afghan desert, the silence broke. A distant rumble rolled through the stones, slow, steady, and a live. And as the mountains trembled once more, the question that had haunted every soldier, every witness, every whisperer of the legend came rushing back like the echo of a buried heart. If it wasn't human, and it wasn't alone, then what had they really awakened beneath the earth? The hidden truth beneath the mountains. The night sky over Kandahar was unnaturally still when the tremor came. No wind, no stars visible. Just a faint hum rolling through the sand, like the breath of something enormous beneath the earth. In a nearby outpost, security cameras flickered, their feeds momentarily swallowed by static. Then, from one of the sealed cave entrances, a dull red glow pulsed once, then vanished. Thousands of miles away, in a dimly lit control room in Virginia, a single word appeared on a classified screen: reactivation. The order went out quietly. Drones launched without lights. Surveillance satellites shifted focus. And in the shadows of the Pentagon's forgotten corridors, files once sealed under Operation Silence Dawn were reopened. On the surface, it looked like another regional flare-up. But those who'd been there before, they knew it wasn't war. It was awakening. Within 48 hours. A team of contractors touched down near the mountains, men who didn't wear any nation's flag. Their leader, a man named Carson, had been briefed on one thing only: containment. What he didn't know was what he was meant to contain. When they arrived, the site was unrecognizable. The cave they'd been told was collapsed was now open again, a jagged wound in the hillside. The ground was scorched, the air thick with static. As they advanced, the sensors in their suits began to fail, batteries draining, signals cutting out. Then the smell hit them. The same metallic rot described in every buried report. Carson's voice crackled over comms. Anyone else feel that vibration? It wasn't the ground this time. It was in the chest, deep, rhythmic, steady. A pulse, slow and deliberate, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The deeper they moved, the stranger it became. Walls that had once been stone now looked half-melted, their surfaces shimmering like glass. Carvings, the same spirals seen by Dr. Fadl, glowed faintly beneath their flashlights, as if reacting to their presence. One of the men reached out to touch the markings, and the light under his glove flared red. A moment later, his body cam went dark. He didn't scream. He didn't fall. He simply stopped moving. Carson ordered a retreat, but before they could reach the surface, the cave began to hum. A deep resonance filled the tunnels, shaking the dust loose from the ceiling. One of the team yelled that their compasses were spinning. Another shouted that their motion sensors were picking up multiple signatures, large, fast, moving closer. And then, the lights failed. What followed was chaos, shouting, gunfire, flashes of light illuminating shadows that moved wrong. Carson swore. He saw eyes in the dark, dozens of them, circling. When one of the figures lunged, it wasn't just big, it was massive. Red skin, arms too long, face too human. But what froze him wasn't its size. It was what came after. From behind the creature, more shapes emerged. Smaller, faster, moving in perfect sync, like predators protecting something. The last transmission from Carson's team was a single line. Through broken static, there's more than one. And they're not trapped down here. They're guarding something. Then, silence dot by morning, every trace of the operation was wiped. Satellite footage replaced by sandstorm overlays. Local villagers relocated without explanation. And in Washington, a new classification appeared, Echo Red. Only 5 people on Earth had clearance to read it, but secrets have a way of slipping through cracks. One analyst who worked on the project couldn't stay silent. He leaked fragments of internal correspondence between scientists overseeing the specimens. According to those documents, the original creature recovered years ago hadn't died. Its biological tissue continued to regenerate even after dismemberment. The samples reacted violently to low-frequency sound, the same frequency the mountains had emitted during the tremor. It wasn't dead because it wasn't entirely organic. The samples contained microscopic structures, metallic, precise, far beyond any natural form. A hybrid of biology and machine. Something built. Something ancient. The scientists had concluded it wasn't an isolated organism. It was a sentinel, a guardian placed to protect or imprison whatever lay deeper beneath the caves. And when one was destroyed, the others began to wake. Meanwhile, strange readings began appearing worldwide. Low vibrations detected beneath mountain ranges in Turkey, Iran, and even the Himalayas. Each pulse matched the same frequency from Kandahar. It was as if something vast and connected was stirring beneath continents, following a rhythm no one could explain. One geologist described it in a leaked voice note. It's not seismic. It's patterned. Almost like communication. The Pentagon dismissed it as misinformation. But behind closed doors, the term echo signal network began appearing in reports, suggesting the pulses were part of a global system dormant for thousands of years. If that were true, the Kandahar creature wasn't unique. It was a fragment of something much larger. Something buried, silent, waiting. Weeks later, satellite images captured one more anomaly, a massive sinkhole forming where the original cave had been. From the air, it looked like a spiral burned into the ground. The same shape carved into the ancient stones. Inside the Pentagon, one general reportedly asked the question no one wanted to say aloud. What if the wars we fight aren't about oil or territory, but about what's under them? The official response was silence. And somewhere in the deserts of Afghanistan, as the wind howled across the empty hills, a single low vibration rolled through the sand once more. Deep, slow, steady, almost like breathing dot in the distance. Under the dim red haze of a rising dawn, a figure moved across the ridge, too tall, too smooth. Disappearing into the light, the mountain quieted again. For now, but those who had seen what lived beneath it knew one thing for certain. What was once buried does not stay buried forever.